Today I will be showing you how to change a Mazda 626 2.0 liter engine coolant temperature sensor. Some symptoms of why you might need to change the coolant temperature sensor is if your coolant temperature gauge is either reading nothing or pegged off the scale high, even though your engine has just warmed up or you've just started your car. Temp gauge, for whatever reason, is not functioning properly. Or if your engine is incorrectly reading the coolant temperature for whatever reason. And there's multiple reasons, and you should probably go on to the forums to get that properly diagnosed before you just start throwing parts at the problem. Good places to do that for 66s is Mazda626.net for probes, maybe Probe Talk. I know there's another probe forum out there, many probe forums, or MX6s, MX6.com. The first thing that you want to do when replacing your engine coolant temperature sensor is to remove the housing here. There are two clips, one on each side, pry up, and those are really tight. And I actually broke mine on the opposite side because I was trying to use two 90-degree pliers to come at it this way and lift it up, and lifted it up too hard and it snapped this side over here. But I think as long as you've got one side down there, because the one side will still lock. Both sides locking, it's pretty tough. It's not going anywhere. Just the one side I think should be fine. So this is what I did when I tried to remove it. Got my 90 degrees in there, pried it up like that, and it snapped it. So I don't recommend using this method. Now I'm just doing this to show you. I've already changed it out and everything, so I'm just going to go back and do this as a tutorial. The way that I did it was using this little pick tool and got under each side like that and pried it up. Do not pull it by the wire here. Do not try and pull it up here because you'll just pull those wires right out. I did not do that, but I can see that happening very easily. Do not pull by the wires. Not with that guy. Not with any wires really, including harnesses or anything. You're always supposed to use the housing. So you pry those two clips up and you remove it. It's very hard to remove. So take your time. This will actually be the longest step in this entire process, is just removing this. And then you stuff that away. The Mazda 626 has a lot of different engine coolant temperature sensors. There's different ones for the 2.0 or the 2.5, which is a 4-cylinder versus the 6-cylinder. And there's also different sensors for a manual versus an automatic. So you've got at least 4, plus you've got different variations between the years. My particular sensor, when I went to get it replaced, was actually listed as a Ford Probe V6 manual. Not kidding you. But that just goes to show you the accuracy of these auto parts stores databases. They're not at all. Here's the box that I got the sensor in. My particular sensor, SU268. I don't know what kind of shape you would call that. A teardrop shape. Now most coolant temperature sensors are actually somewhat rectangular. Almost about the shape of an iPad or an iPod kind of shape. It's got rounded corners on it, but it's still rectangular. There are some that are circular. There's a lot of different variations. Once you get to this step and you take this out, take the part with you to the parts store. It's much easier when they have the part to look at and you can reference that versus their parts database, which is horrible. I spent an hour in the parts store. I'm not going to name names of which store it was, but their databases are horrible for the 626 anyway. So in order to get this out, you can take the open end of a 1-inch wrench and kind of fit it down in there, but the housing for the filter, oh, actually that's another good point to make. If you have the stock filter, about the only way that you're going to be able to get past in there, actually you might have to take the filter out. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, because there's no way to get a 1-inch wrench down in there. You might be able to do it going this way. Yeah, nope, 1 inch is not, you're going to have to take the filter out. So take your filter box assembly out. Wow, that's a lot more involved than I thought. Sorry guys. It's a little bit easier if you have an intake kit. Once you get that out, you can just slip the the circular style. I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember what kind of style that is. There's an open-ended and a box wrench. Maybe that's the box style. I don't know. Anyway, once you get it loose, then you can just take it out by hand, pull out the part. I'll show you my old one. Now, hopefully, it will come with a new washer. And the washer is down here, so you want to make sure you get that old washer off if it's stuck in there for whatever reason. This is what an engine coolant temperature sensor looks like. It's just a probe on the end here. Can't really tell that it's measuring anything, but depending on how hot this is will depend on the measurement or the electronic readings that you get out of here. I believe it's a thermistor, but don't hold me to that. Once you remove this sensor, you will see that there is coolant right there, because coolant passes on this probe, and that's how it measures your coolant temperature. The Mazda 626 radiator has two parts. One part radiator, or coolant radiator, and another part, the lower part, is a transmission cooler if you have an automatic. Now here's the transmission cooler lines, which run, it's kind of hard to see, but it runs up and connects right here to the radiator. And that's where you're, I'm not sure if that's an inlet or an outlet for the transmission coolant. Actually, I should say automatic transmission fluid. Then it gets routed through the radiator, and then it makes a loop, and it comes back, and that's how your transmission fluid is cooled, air cooled. So Mazda 626s do have a built-in transmission cooler, but it's obviously not adequate. Right above the lower radiator hose, which is this hose right here, right above that is either the inlet or the outlet. There's one there for the transmission cooler, and then there's one here. And obviously this is where your engine coolant goes, and then your lower coolant down here. So for the engine coolant, your engine coolant will, let's say, start up here for all intents and purposes, go here, then go out the outlet from the radiator into this hose, and pass through the thermostat, and depending on how warm the engine coolant temperature is, depends on how much coolant gets routed here, then it'll go up in here, and here is your well, actually I'm not really doing that too well. Right here is your water pump, and then the water pump has a fan blade, fins, and it spins like any other fan does, just like your radiator fan, and it pushes all the coolant through the engine. Let's say up into that jacket, down into that jacket, back around, out through here, and then this shoots to the IAC, goes around the engine, up into the IAC, then the IAC has an outlet, and that travels back, and then that completes that loop. After the main jacket, it gets output right here, and then goes in this direction, hits the engine coolant temperature sensor, and then comes out to that upper radiator hose back into the radiator from this side, and then gets looped back, and that's how that engine coolant loop happens. So this temperature sensor is already after all the coolant has gone through the engine, so it's measuring after engine coolant temperature. If your engine is not running properly, it will overheat the coolant, causing an overheat, possibly an engine shutdown, emergency shutdown sequence kind of thing, which can happen, has happened, known to happen. And it's not just the fault of the engine coolant temperature sensor. It's actually the fault of the engine itself. It could be one of numerous mechanical issues inside the engine which would cause the engine to shut down. Alright, so once you get that out, you get the new part in, replace it, put your cap back on. Make sure that's nice and tight. Start the car, and hopefully, if you've been having a gauge issue, a misreading on your gauge, that will fix that. If that doesn't fix it, it means you're going to have an electrical problem with your gauge cluster. More than likely, it's a loose harness behind the dash, or a bad ground somewhere. Bad grounds can also be behind the dash. This right next to it is the ground point for this sensor. So check this and make sure that that is good too. Hope you've learned a lot about how the coolant is routed through your FS engine. This should help Protege, Probe, Telstar, MX-6 and 626 owners, because we all share the common FS engine. In different variations, not everything that you see in here might be applicable to your car, but as far as the sensors go, definitely. As far as the same years, we all share the same fans, we share the same radiator. I think the Protege battery is a little bit tilted, but pretty much the same. It might be the same for the Ford Probe. We all share the same boots, same manifolds, same fuel rails, PCV valves, engine mounts. I mean, just about anything in here is all completely common to what we refer to as the PMX community, or Pro MX-6, 626 community. I think we should include the Telstar there, the Ford Telstar, which was produced in Malaysia. Almost identical. It's more of a cousin, a cool cousin. Go Telstars. I really enjoy looking at Telstars. This procedure is so easy that a grandmother could do it. I honestly believe that. You don't need much torque, you don't need much wrist force to crack this open. Once you get this sensor off and open, it just takes a very slight crack because it has a lock washer on here. So it's meant to come off easy. As long as you re-torque it down tight, it's not going anywhere. And it's real easy. There's really no reason that you should have to go to a mechanic in order to replace your engine coolant temperature sensor for the FS 2.0 engine. Your grandmother could do it. It's very, very simple. You don't need to pay a mechanic to do this.
Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Anyone can do it.
Hope that's helped some people. Have a good one.